It takes time to get this sense of astronomical awareness of it. You work towards it, you do the charts, you apply it, and little by little it dawns on you and you begin to grow at it and you begin to growing at it. I've been teaching this and going over this for 45 years. And every time I'm learning more and gaining more and redoing it. So this is foundational stuff to me, but going from the graphic to the astronomy to the physical world of it is not, it's not a big jump for me. It's a natural process, but it took a lot of time to get that. You got to go through all the ideas of it first, then the reality of it is in the chart more than just the ideals. So, okay, we have this awareness, activity, awareness. We're still working on the activity, the conjunction hemisphere and the opposition hemisphere. But the adjustment, the square points, it's the stressful repercussions of action. The whole waxing side is the repercussions of action. But the square is the stressful repercussions of actions. What do you mean I'm doing this? You're in my way, you're stepping my way, you're pushing me, you're pushing too hard. What? I'm not doing that, what? There's stress. And yeah, and adjustments having to meet repercussions of stressful action. Stressful, it's repercussions of action. But it can be constructive because you have to work it through because it's affecting others. Then when you get in the setting half from the awareness, the waning square, your understanding is you're trying to tell others how they should do it because you're saying what's right or wrong. This is, I understand it should be like this, so let's all do it like that. And less people are, and you're having to practice what you preach. So between going from the awareness back to activity, I realized I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll try to make it up. I'll make it up. You please, you're not going to be listened to, but until you get the moment when the activity conjuncts again. But the square is the repercussions of the waning square is the repercussions of awareness, and the waxing square is the repercussions of action. They're both stressful, both dynamic. They're both squares. So it's something square. We look at the chart, we say, oh, there's a square. But if you look at the chart, you should be able to, you can see right away, just looking from that planet across, which is square, which is waxing, and which is waning. It's important. These things, you may not see as so much important when you're working with the natal chart and just have the stress patterns that's there. When you start working with phases or timings, in transits, we work with conjunction squares and oppositions mostly, and you can see these phases working out. But in progressions, where time is slowed down, and we're looking at 3 months really in detail, you start to see these phases. You get to a place where seeing this might resolve an understanding or a perception. It begins to become a little more, you can start to see some of these subtler things better. So many things unfold. The rose unfolds. The rose of the heart unfolds, and as we get to progressions, up till now, it's just been the mind and making the associations. So this is all this extra depth is in preparation for the progressions to see these things in a deeper format, but they're totally useful in other areas. They're just not needed so much at your natal chart level. It's only when you evolve it and get more sophisticated. Okay. So again, this is just now with the light and the dark line, the opposition is towards the full moon. It's the right half. You can see it. The subjective, the conjunction side is the dark half. Broken line below. We had it above, below. We had a rising setting. We had a daylight increasing night. We had summer, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. Same measuring. Every cycle can be divided this way in half. And the other half, it makes the quarters. So, yeah. So there we have it's the same drawing. We have the conjunction hemisphere, the activity, the opposition hemisphere, and the waxing and the waning. Okay, and you see the activity, the subjective activity, the instigation of things starting within the receptiveness and the pushing things as far as they can go on the greatest brightness towards the opposition. So again, we're still holding the same cycle. We've got the waxing, waning squares, and it shows the stressful repercussions of action. So here you're seeing really the activity, the stressful adjustment of action that's there, the waxing. And as the awareness comes in, you're seeing this is a point where you're going from understanding to activity, which is more important. you have too much understanding, it's going to be hard to do things, and sooner you're going to have a stress to have to get out of your understanding and get to do something. I understand what needs to be, and you go do this, you go do this, but wait a second, what are you doing? Like, you have to practice what you preach, you have to put it back into action. Yeah, you're acting, and you can act and go along acting a certain amount. There's a certain amount you can push what you're doing, but at some point you have to take considerations of others and what effect the action is having on others. And if it's a bad effect, you're going to have to make an adjustment. If it's a good effect, you can adjust it and make it better. So the aspects are just the dividing lines between the phases, and you can see them as a certain type of adjustment. Okay, so this is another way of drawing it, just with the inner circle of the waxing, solid, the inner circle of the waning with the two lines. The outer circle of conjunction is 2 arrows. The opposition is the 1 arrow. It's just a way of drawing it. Like if we were going to draw it and try and follow through the phases that are affecting each, the square, waxing square, the waning square means something. They mean things. They're positioned in a place where a certain type of energy is going on. It's coming from one area and going to the next area. So when you do a chart, that's almost too much navigating. It's not, there's stress there between these planets enough to work with. But when you try to understand it deeper, you slow it down, you're seeing deeper attitudes, you're seeing what's going on, you're getting the deeper complexes in someone. These things, why the stress is there, where it's coming from, where it's going to, they're useful to know. A lot depends on the level of sensitivity and what frequency or what level of consciousness you're working with on someone's chart. Because you can see it for yourself, but if nobody's concerned about that, like it may not, you can talk about what you see, but it's learning to see what someone else needs. And well, maybe this is useful to them. Maybe your ability to see this in their actions or in your own, in your chart, you can begin to start to see this goes deeper and there's other ways of understanding the stress involved here. So when we had this, with the drawing and the words here, it's just simply there as solid and broken lines. So you see on this side, this solid, it's divided into 4 sections. So you have from the conjunction, you have the light it's coming at the greatest darkness, light increases, there's still a dark side. This is extending action. Nobody's noticing you're doing what you can, you're extending your action. And the conjunction is, that planet that's past the conjunction is moving generally in transits, and then you think of the faster planet as moving around away. It takes on the impression of the other slower planet and then moves forward, okay, carrying it. But because of progressions, the other planets move forward too. They may not do the slower moving planet will still have a relationship to the natal chart position that's anchored. So there still can be, these phases can still happen from a slow moving planet to your natal chart. And but in the transits to the transits, you usually see the faster one moving, and the progressions, you see the faster one moving. But to the natal chart, they're anchors, and every planet has this cycle. So we're just seeing the solid and the broken, the light increasing, and it's yet darker. And then when you're getting from the waxing square, you're going into the adjusted the action to be action, and to know, to see what you're doing and the action before you're just winging it. Here you're seeing what you're doing and pushing to see how far you can get it going to the opposition. From the opposition, you get some awareness of what you did. Look where I come from. Ha! Or, oh, Jesus, this is what happened. Why is it every time it happens, it goes like this? There's negative energy. Every time we do something, it always ends up like this. That's people who haven't really followed through on the action as well as they could have, hadn't dealt with the stress. I could be argued the whole half of the circle is a square. It's always a stress to put the action out to get the understanding. If you stop anywhere along the process, you diminish your understanding if you don't follow through and complete something. Kind of like if you make love to someone and you get satisfied and then fall asleep and the other person is left there, there's going to be repercussions out of that. You're not going to get you're going to sleep. You're not understanding what you did, but by the next day, you're realizing, oh, I'm getting the culture of what's happening. You're starting to get the reactions to it, and you want to make up for it, but you're going to do your time first. That's the repercussions of awareness. Negative example. I like to put the aspects relationships to to think of them as sexual relationships because it's very easy, much easier to visualize coming together, being apart, than the planets are doing that. Oh my, you have a stand. Then the moon phases follow the same pattern. Then you begin to see the subtler other planets. As you get, see, the whole trick in astrology is getting to know the planets better and better. And you begin to tune in and use the planets, but then eventually begin to listen to the planets, learn how to align to the planets. Wow, again, it changes how you're living and how the chart is helping, as it works for you. One, it takes you out into the world to deal with things, to put your affairs in order. The other takes you in to open up the inner mysteries and understanding and help you detach from things. Two different levels of astrology. Probably the detaching and the going in, you come closer to that as you get to the progressions. You start to see how far you can take things, how much time you have in the world. Yeah, and what's within the scope of what you can do. Okay, so this is just has the same aspects. It's just drawing it without all the words, with elephants. Here's the broken on the inside. Is the nighttime, is the opposition, is the waning. It means waning. And on the outside, it's waning, but it's still the light half. It's still the light half, so it's just after the opposition. At the square, it becomes waning, and it's the dark half. It's going into the darkness. It's almost instinctively moving towards the next. It's you're adjusting your awareness. So at the opposition, you're extending your awareness. The square, the waning square, you're adjusting it. At the conjunction, you start extending. After the conjunction, you get the energy, the activity. You start extending your action. At the square, you're having to adjust it, and you start adjusting. From after the square, you're adjusting your action until you get to the understanding. So this is the main four aspects. All the other aspects will fit into these phases and will have something to do with the phase that this is going through. So the sextiles are always going to be in the adjusting, in the extending action or adjusting awareness, but on the activity side, the trines will always be on the opposition side. And all the other smaller aspects will be aligned as steps in this process of extending action, extending awareness, adjusting awareness. Okay, so now what happens, we have the four, and by going into the semi-squares, the 45 degrees, the halfway points, we get 8 divisions, because we did 2, the rising, setting up, when we added the above, when we had the waxing and the waning, then we had the active and awareness. These give us these 4 sections. If these divide in half again, we'll get 8 sections. It's kind of like we have 2 parents, activity and awareness. We have 4 grandparents, 2 on the active side, 2 on the understanding side, and we have 8 great-grandparents. So here's the 8. On the inside, you'll see in each half, one half is a solid line on the outside, the other half is a broken line on the outside. So that's the light half of that, that's the dark half. The light half, dark half of each quadrant. So we get to the quadrant, we have the main stress, the activity, the awareness, the waxing, we have the stressful repercussions of actions at the square. Well, there's stressful struggle to adjust activity. See, the adjusting activity is a whole quarter of the chart, quarter of the cycle, and we have the stressful struggle to adjust activity at the semi-square. It's just adjusting the activity and making a little bit extra effort because you know you're running into the square to get as much done as you can before you start running into the major square. Then the square is there, and then there's adjustment. I have to adjust more. Oh, gee, okay. Then you go. That's why it's easier to do things if nobody's talking about it. If you're just doing it, nobody knows. But as soon as people start interacting, there's interaction. It's not so easy to navigate. It slows down. You have to be more aware. But this gives us our 8 divisions. And the inside, in the I Ching, these are called the 8 trigrams. Each one has a symbolism related to mother, father, and the family members, the nature symbol, the quality. So this allows you to interpret the I Ching measure the 8 phases, the 8-fold noble path, and it relates to the 8 phases of the moon, 8 phases of any cycle. So